My name is Anthony. I'll share a little bit more about myself here in a few. But we're incredibly grateful to gather everyone and just talk about just some really cool and reflect about some really awesome things that have happened at TGC this year. And so myself and Sandy, who I'll introduce, we'll go through some questions, kind of reflect, think about where we've come, where we've been, where we're going, and be able to share with you some really fun things that have been happening. And so today we're going to cover three key areas. We're going to reflect on accomplishments in TGC this year, how God has graciously allowed us to deepen our impact, not only just in width, but also depth. So we're really excited about that. We're going to talk a little bit about culture. So we've done a lot of extensive research on the culture and how it's been shaping in the last handful of years, and what sort of obstacles and challenges and also opportunities that face TGC and identifying those things. And then we want to share a little bit about our strategic vision for 2025. We're pretty excited as an executive team to be thinking and looking ahead and dreaming about ways that we can accomplish our vision within the impact that we have within the audience that we have within our website. And so if you've never met me before, my name is Anthony Alphin. I'm the Vice President of Operations and Marketing at the Gospel Coalition. I'm so excited to be here today. My role at TGC allows me to help guide strategic initiatives, create creative projects and operational efforts that help support a mission. My team's kind of philosophy is to do everything behind the scenes so that other people are successful. And so we're really excited about the team that we have, that they can kind of lead the operational support of things. I live in Columbia, Missouri, as I said before. I have a wife. Her name is Megan. She has a doctorate in physical therapy and does pediatric PT in home for kids in our community. And we have 4 children, a 10-year-old and 3 4-year-olds. That is triplets. I have triplets. I have to say it 3 times in order to make sure I get my head around it. One of the things that we want to do for you before I introduce Sandy is that we want to invite you in to ask questions as we are doing this. So please use the Q&A box, not the chat box, to ask questions as we're going, and use the upvote feature. If you see questions in there that you would love to get answered, upvote it, and that way I know and it gets to the top, and I can make sure we prioritize that. Well, let's go ahead and have Sandy come on and jump right in as I introduce him. So Sandy Willson is our interim president of the Gospel Coalition. He's also a pastor, formerly at Second Pres in Memphis, Tennessee. I saw a few Memphis people on our chat. And so Sandy might either know you or you might know him as a neighbor. He also has pastored at Memorial Presbyterian Church in Elizabethton, Tennessee. Is that right? Elizabethton?
You're close.
Sandy? Yeah, you might have to correct that one more. Anyway, Sandy was also a member of the original TGC Council. Not only was he an original member, when I look at the incorporated documents, it has 3 signatures that helped TGC get going: Tim Keller, Don Carson, and Sandy Willson, which is an incredible journey that he's been. He's been very invested in TGC and what we're doing. His wife, Allison, and him have been married for 50 years. They have 5 children, 3 daughter-in-laws, 2 son-in-laws, and 14 grandchildren. I mean, I thought my triple things was in it, but my goodness, that's some legacy right there. So Sandy, welcome. I don't know if you're going to say anything else, introduce yourself, or correct my Elizabethton comment, but
Yeah, I'll do that first. It's Elizabethton, by the way.
Oh, Elizabethton.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the first church I pastored. I was a salesman with the Steel Corporation, then went to seminary after I got converted, and then pastored a church in a small town in Northeast Tennessee. Then I pastored at Lookout Mountain Presbyterian Church in the Chattanooga
Wow.
area for about 9 years, and then came to Memphis for my longest pastoral work, which was 22 years at Second Presbyterian Church, from which I retired and did interim pastorates. And then the board of the Gospel Coalition asked me to become their interim president. And at that time, I asked them, "Don't you want to get someone qualified for this role?" And so they apparently said, "No, I don't know." But I've been doing that for 18 months. And shortly after I came on board, my claim to fame is that I hired Anthony Alphin as vice president of operations and marketing. And he's been doing a fabulous job, because what Anthony and I discovered right from the beginning was that we had 2 really big problems. Number one, we were massively understaffed, and secondly, undercapitalized. So we are looking for more and more friends who will be part of our team, because we really need to grow and develop in some significant ways. But it's true, as Anthony said, I was in on the original council, and I'm nowhere near the caliber of either Don Carson or Tim Keller, but I, like 40 other pastors, we met with them in Chicago at Trinity Evangelical Divinity School in 2005. So that'd be 20 years coming up this next
Yep.
year, and we're going to celebrate our 20th anniversary. But Tim and Don had a burden, and I still share that burden with them. And that's the reason that when 40 pastors were sent an invitation to come to TEDS, to Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, all 40 senior pastors showed up. I've never seen that happen again in my life. But the
Hmm.
reason was we not only had very high respect for Tim and Don, but we had high respect for the problem they were addressing. And basically, Don put it this way 20 years ago, and Tim both put it this way, that in classic church renewal, when churches are healthy, they combine three things. One is orthodox theology, and the second is spiritual renewal, and the third is cultural engagement. And the crisis, as they saw it, was that the church was not combining those three things in a way that made us an effective evangelistic witness to the world, nor effectively discipling members of our churches. So we set about trying to uh, declare the gospel, defend the gospel, and apply the gospel to all of life, and to encourage especially younger pastors through the church to build the church up so that we're more able to do this. Well, since those days, I have to say, the sense of urgency about this has only increased. I mean, when you look at the number of nuns, NONES, that is
Hmm.
no religious affiliation, the group that calls themselves nuns below the age of 35 has tripled over these past 20 years. So it's an amazing crisis that we're facing. And then, of course, you're aware that some of our folks at TGC did groundbreaking research on people who are becoming unchurched. And what we discovered was that over the past 25 years, 40 million people have left the church. It's the biggest spiritual movement in American history ever. So we're facing a crisis of people having left the church. It's not just the pandemic; it was even before the pandemic. This was happening. So the third thing that we know that we're facing is major discouragement among pastors.
Hmm.
A lot of our task is to encourage younger leadership, building them up, resourcing them, so that the church can be what it's supposed to be. Uh, if you're in the States, you're quite aware of the sort of cultural and political crises we have, the divisions that we're facing. Well, we at TGC are absolutely convinced that the answer to all of this is the gospel working through lively churches that are robust in theology, spiritual piety and devotion, and engaging the culture around them. So that's what TGC is and what we've been seeking to
Hmm.
do for over 20 years. Uh, what I'd like to ask you, Anthony, is what excited you about coming out? You didn't need to take this burden on. Why did you come on and join us? I was a little surprised that you agreed to do it. So what was it?
Well, I was a long time TGC. I still am a long time TGC fan. I told you the story a million times about how when I first got into ministry work, I had a huge challenge of how to disciple a student group that went from 20 to 200 pretty much overnight, and TGC was a huge answer to that. Obviously, prayer was and God was, but TGC was a huge answer of that of how we used TGC content, and so that got me into as a fanboy, if you will, back in 2012, and be obsessed with it ever since. And so when you called me a little over a year ago, I was I was shocked and surprised. I think you told me that 15 of your friends or 10 of your friends recommended me, and I asked them who they were because I was curious on how I got on the radar. But I see a tremendous impact of trying to enter into the digital Babylon, and TGC is doing that to help equip those who are equipping others. I mean, I just think it's just a no-brainer. And so I've seen it even at my own church when we were using content to go from online to in real life. So URL to IRL. And to be able to enter into TGC at a time where it's thinking about the next 20 years, I mean, like what it was a no-brainer. And so it's been really fun. You've kept me busy. I think I've kept you busy. I think I've kept you busy too.
That's for sure. Well, I mean, we brothers and sisters, we've seen some really wonderful developments in the past 18 months that Anthony and I have been on. I mean, we've rebuilt our infrastructure. We've developed a strategic ministry plan. We kind of know what TGC needs to be doing in the future. We think what kind of resources are necessary to get us there. But let me just say, we have made tremendous progress up until now. I mean, uh, I'm just still shocked by this. But when we decided about 15 years ago to go digital, that was a strategic decision that Don Carson
Mhm.
made. And what happened was when we got the cell phones and the iPads, kaboom! And so, we were 30 million users last year. We're already up to 34 as far as we can tell this year at that rate. It's one of the largest evangelical websites in the world. And when I look at our digital resources, all of which are free, it's just amazing. One human being could never get through all the pastoral and practical resources we have for Christians and Christian leaders. So
Mhm.
it's just absolutely stunning. And then our conferences that we started right away. I remember our first sort of prototype conference that we did with 500 people at the Trinity campus. But then after that, of course, we've been thousands upon thousands who have come to our conferences. Last year was our women's conference. We go
Yep.
every other year. One year's a women's conference, the other year's a national conference. Last year at the women's, this year at the women's conference, we had over 9,000 women. It was an amazing event. And I was just with Anthony, I was just with Rebecca McLaughlin this past weekend, and we were doing a conference together. And she said, she brought her friends, and she said, I always bring my friends to that conference. She said, there's
Hmm.
nothing like it. And I said,
Right.
well, what is it, Rebecca, that makes it like unlike any other women's conference that you would go to? And she said, so often the women's conferences, it's just fluff. She said TGC has a deep anchor and they're serious people and they teach, deeply. And she said the teaching is just at a level that you don't get anywhere else. I think those of us on staff probably would have said what made that conference great was
Mm.
simply the presence of the Lord. I mean, people were just talking about how God was with them and blessing them, and our national conference likewise. So we put out about 750 articles a year on our website. We do podcasts that are just really, really interesting. I love tuning in to the latest podcast Colin Hansen has done. Just interviewing some of the most interesting people around. So these resources are meant to change the church, to build it up, to renew all of society, actually. And we know we've got a huge task to do. And Anthony, why don't you just talk for a minute about sort of our strategic plan for next year? What's really pressing on us to do the
Yeah.
job that we know we're supposed to be doing and to expand our reach?
Yeah.
What's up for next year?
Well, it's interesting about the expanding the reach because you say this all the time. Like, it has never been an actual strategic plan to grow. Like, from an audience standpoint, God has just put 30 something million people in front of us. And so, what we want to do is how do we uh, bring them in a hospitable nature through our website, conferences, cohorts, and all that stuff, and funnel them into a good place, especially with community and things like that. So, some of the big things that I know that we've talked about that we're excited about is we want to launch. So our church directory is one of our fourth most visited page on our website. And Sandy talked about de-churching a little bit in some of the data. And so we want to embrace that of how can we move 30 million people back to a church just by inviting them to it. So we're going to be launching a new church directory in January. We're going to create a little bit more of a robust vetting process with that, and so that we can actually put people into the seats when they gather us online. We're
Well,
expanding
and
our.
to talk about that for a moment, if someone moves to Phoenix, they want to know what church should I visit. They go right
That's
on
right.
that directory. I mean, that's the reason it's used. Is people moving and
That's right.
asking where they should go to church. It's a huge service.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I hear stories all the time. I can tell you story after story about someone moving to Houston and thought to himself, "Oh, I'll find a church, no big deal." And then they message us and say, I basically put it on the back burner for many, many weeks until I decided I needed to go do something, and the church director was a huge part of that. I know we plan on expanding our women's content. We have a new women's podcast coming out in Q1 of next year that we're really excited about. Melissa and Courtney doing. We're wanting to overhaul our website. I don't know if any of our attendees here or that are joining the webinar embrace our website with 30 other million people that do it, but it needs some work. It's the brick and mortar of our organization. It's the biggest place that we convene outside of a conference, and so we need to make it more efficient, more searchable, more personal. And it's a pretty large task. I mean, I don't know if I told you this, Sandy, but we were kind of doing the back end of it and getting all the links and all that stuff prepared. I mean, 800,000 pages of content of something that has to be codified and analyzed and make sure that we don't, it ends up getting lost in the shuffle. And so really excited about those things. What are the projects that you can think of, Sandy, in 2025 that you're excited about?
Well, yeah, the website for sure. And I think, isn't that about a $400,000 project to get that website
Oh, yeah.
rebuilt? Yep. It really needs to be completely rebuilt. Yeah, I'm excited about several things. First of all, we launched the Keller Center and the Carson Center in 23. They're both going very, very well. Keller is a little bit further down the road. Carson is still in the early stages. But Dr. Ben Glad, who is New Testament professor at Reformed Theological Seminary, is now our executive director, and he's fantastic. So we're going to have cohorts to help train pastors on key pastoral issues, pastoral ethics, expository preaching, counseling, evangelism, missions, everything you can think of. And we've got really millions of pages, if you will, of resources, commentaries from Genesis 1 to Revelation 22 that are available all over the world, free. So the Carson Center excites me. I would say also this, Anthony, you know how I feel about this, that if we're to reach young pastors, we really need to be more aggressive at convening them at the regional level. So we have about 21 domestic chapters. We just started one in Memphis, for example, where we had about 30 pastors come together. And, our last meeting, Dr. Brent Stenberg talked about stress in ministry and how to handle it. We've got all kinds of theological and cultural issues to talk about in Memphis. So we've got 21 of these chapters. We need to have 41 of them. I mean, we need to double what we're doing. To do that, you've got to have a champion on our staff who's traveling, meeting with people, convening them, pulling them together, showing them how to use our resources. That's just one example of how our ambition is being thwarted because we can't get we don't have the funds to get people into the right slot. Also, I would say our international partners, we have about 20 of those. But once again, those need to grow significantly. But we just don't have the resources to make those connections, to show people how to do what. But we need TGC councils all over the world. And we've started, and things are going well, but we need to do a lot more. And then we need to be translating our excellent material, especially in the Carson Center. We've got to get this out in multiple languages. We've already done a lot of work. Those are expensive. So we'd love to have the ability to translate the best material around the world, because the fact of the matter is this: 85% of the world's pastors outside of the USA have zero theological training. Zero. But they all have cell phones. And we've got free material. So we need to get on our horses and get this material out to more and more people.
That's awesome, Sandy. I kind of go back a little bit and just even think about 2024 in general. You talked about the conference, you talked about the Keller Center, Carson Center. What are some other, just in your mind, what are some other things that you are just so energized behind that have been happening this year at TGC?
Well, I'm energized by things that might bore some of our hearers. I mean, when you have a structure that was we're an entrepreneurial organization, let's just put it that way, and we're young, so probably everybody on this call knows what that means: chaos. And so when we hired you, the line you gave us that convinced us more than ever, you're the right man for the job, is that you love bringing order out of chaos. So just in terms of who we are as an organization and the health of our organization, I am so grateful, Anthony. And we've got a missional staff who, you know, they're highly motivated, they're competent, they
Yeah.
work well together with each other, and they're well organized. I take great satisfaction in that. But one thing is greater than that, and that is when I travel the country every day, people tell me how much they appreciate the Gospel Coalition website.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
mean, it's just everywhere. I mean, we're obviously doing a great job, and the level of confusion in our country demands what TGC does. I mean, for example, I saw this the other day. There was about 2 years ago, Lifeway did a research project in cahoots with Ligonier Ministries. Here's some of what they found out among evangelicals, that 48%, get this now, 48% of evangelicals agree that God learns and adapts to different circumstances. So God kind of is changing as time goes on. Get
Right.
this, let me give you a couple more of these. 65% of evangelicals today agree that everyone is born innocent in the eyes of
Mm.
God. I mean, it's just absolutely contrary to what the Bible teaches. Why do
That's
we
right.
need salvation if everybody's innocent? And this
That's
is
right.
probably the worst of all. 56% of evangelicals, I'm sorry, that's not the one. 43% of evangelicals agree that Jesus was a great teacher, but he was not God. Anthony, that's at critical levels.
Yeah.
So the sort of resourcing and teaching that we're doing through website and leadership training, cohorts, conferences, all of that, it's vitally urgent
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So I feel
Yeah.
more compelled by the TGC mission here 20 years later than I did when I first met with
Wow.
Don and Tim.
Wow. That's amazing. I know that you're talking about our missional staff, and it's interesting. I think one of the most common questions our staff get is, "Are we trying to replace the church at TDC?" And my goodness, could that be wrong? Like, what makes our staff so energized and on mission is that I do believe this, and Sandy, you can back me up on this. Every day they're thinking, how can we open the front door of the church as wide as humanly possible while closing the back door? And we've kind of, drilled this down to it just comes down to resourcing. You got to resource it with content, curriculum, small group study, Bible study, commentaries. You got to resource them with people, with their church directory, funneling them to the front door. And we even resource it with staff. I had a story. We have a job board on our website that is, I think our church directory and our job board are our top five sites. But I had a guy in Texas who had a position open for 9 months. It was a youth ministry job, and Sandy, they were offering $110,000 salary plus moving expenses. I'm like, and for 9 months they couldn't. I'm like, I thought about applying, but
Yeah.
but they couldn't fill it. And then he reached out to me and asked me on the job board. We put it on our website. Within 14 days, they had their leading candidate.
That's
And
amazing.
it's just, and so opening the front door, closing the back, resourcing the church to be successful, making them the hero, is just a big deal to us.
I would mention one other thing that you and I have talked a lot about that's really important to us, and we don't have the capacity to do it right now. But we're aware that folks in business and in the other professions, so many of them
Mm,
feel extraordinarily lonely.
yes.
Just and sometimes besieged, and often not really knowing how to address some of the ethical issues they've got in their professions. And you and I both want to see something launched that's very significant with faith and business, faith
Yes.
and the marketplace. And to do that right, we really
Yeah.
need a champion who will
Yep.
lead us. And once again, we just do not have the margins to do that right now. But that's
Yeah.
high on our list. We'd love to get at it. And I suspect the people on this call would love to see us get at it too.
I
Um,
mean, it's one of the most common things I get asked all the time. Like, how are you resourcing the marketplace leaders? Well, you and I would have said we are. I mean, all the content is transferable. I hear constant conversations about CEOs who are rushing from one meeting to the next to their small group study, and they go to TGC to kind of prep for that immediately. So it is there, but it is the interpretation piece and the bringing it to the workplace, the loneliness, how to address cultural issues, how to love and care for your non-believing staff, like all that stuff. It's heavy. That is so heavy, and we hear it all the time.
Right. It really concerns me. So though those are some of the areas where I think we should expand our reach. It's because there's a there's a need for it. We're being pulled, but we know that we can't get outside our boundaries of what's healthy.
That's right. That's right.
And so that's the reason I'm so glad the folks are on the call today, because we know we're not doing this alone. There's no way. We've got to have an array of partners who are committed with us. And so I'm just hopeful that we know that some of the folks on the call today are already engaged with us. Some are considering it. And I'm just really, really grateful, because this has to be a big movement of a lot of people who are committed
That's right.
to.
Well, like I said to the audience, we're going to use the Q&A feature here in a second. So if you have questions in there and you want to upvote some things, go for it. I noticed one that's really important. I think, Sandy, you would love to answer this one, but one of the questions that came in is, how's the search for the long-term president going? Not that we're trying to dethrone you, but but I know you're eager to share kind of the news on that as well. I think it's
Yeah.
a question I commonly get.
Yeah, no, I meant to mention that, so I really appreciate the question. We're going very well with it. We've got an excellent presidential search committee. Dr. Ligon Duncan is presiding over that committee. Uh, Nancy Guthrie is on the committee. Ryan Kwan on the West Coast. H.B. Charles in Florida. Um, Juan Sanchez, our board chair, is on it. Andy Davis, First Baptist in Raleigh, is on it. I know I'm leaving somebody out, but you can tell that's an excellent committee. And my administrative assistant helps keep them on track in their schedule, because they're all so busy, and she gets all their
We love
meetings set
Helen.
up for them.
Shout
Oh,
out to Helen.
Helen's fantastic. But Ligon, if you put Helen and Ligon together, along with Ligon's assistant Jan, man, they're a team. And
Yeah,
so
they climb mountains.
they are now in their final stages, and I think it's okay for me to quote Ligon to say that they are thinking they'll probably have an announcement sometime at the turn of the year. And so I know who their candidates are. They're finalists. And Anthony, you and I and our whole team would be thrilled with any of them. They're all excellent people. So in fact, it's kind of hard. It'd be kind of hard to choose if you knew who they were. So they've done an excellent job of bringing to the table some fine finalists. And I'm expecting that, turn of the year, we'll probably have an announcement. It's likely. I hate to build up hopes and then get dashed. That could happen.
Right.
But
there's a process.
but I think it's likely. And then, these are busy people and they're in ministry. So I doubt they would be able to come right away. But I'm hoping that by the conference in April, which, by the way, we want to mention, the April 22 through 24, ladies and gentlemen, please don't miss out. Indianapolis, April 22 through 24. Please come join us. Bring your spouses, children, grandchildren. I brought 2 grandchildren.
Staff.
Staff. I brought 2 granddaughters to the women's conference, and both their lives were significantly affected by that. But anyway, that's the presidential search, and I'm very happy about it. And Anthony, when you and I started out, I think I said to you and to others, give us about 18 months on an interim. We've got some things to do. We've got to address some problems and get, clean house and do some things. And I feel like now we're ready for that permanent president to come in and have a nice 10-year at the least sort of haul. I'm very grateful. This 18-month period has been necessary. It's been healthy, and it's timely. So yes, I'm eager not just to get get fired, but I'm eager.
Resigned. Get resigned.
Yeah, I'm eager for TGC's sake to have our new president. So I'm hoping January we have an announcement.
Well, I've always thought as a measure of success is not that your happiness matters, but like for you to be part of the original kind of founding of this thing, like boots on the ground side, to kind of step in, 19 plus years later that help us out during this time period. Kind of even bringing us back a little bit to the roots, but also teeing it up for the next guy to be set up for success. I mean, one that's admirable, Sandy. I appreciate that. But two, it's been fun. Like you and I have had a blast,
We
just getting
have,
in the weeds
yeah.
on some stuff and just
Well, for
making
me
things
too,
happen.
it's been a great honor. You know, I'll say this, shortly before Tim Keller died, he called me and he just said, "Take the job."
What do you do with that?
So I just saluted and said,
Yeah,
"Yes,
that's
sir."
right. I mean, yeah, that would be. I bet you were pretty intimidated by that.
He was a great friend. I miss him every day.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Back to the questions here. What will the vetting process look like for the church directory? Thanks for asking that. So we take that extremely serious, and so I'll give you kind of the high level overview of what that looks like, but there's obviously more kind of details in the weeds. So we're dedicating a staff to it this go around. We're going to make everyone who's currently in the current church directory 3 to 4 month period for them to kind of refill out the forms. We have check marks in there that kind of show kind of a harmonizing and affirming of our foundation documents so that they're aligned with our reformed beliefs. And then we go in and we dig into them. We go to their website, we go to their staff page. We're looking to see if they're real. We're making sure that we have a direct contact with someone who's in leadership there, and checking them out. Then with our chapters that we have set up, if we aren't really sure, if they align with us, we'll utilize our boots in the ground efforts with our chapters and our council and our board who are in the area to help to vet that. My guess, right now there's about 10,000 churches on our church directory. My guess is about 4,000 will kind of reapply because some of them, I don't even know. We don't, like, when we send them an email now, it bounces, and so I'm not sure what's going on there. But we're pretty excited about that. It's pretty robust. If you know, is it 9 Marks, Sandy? They have a playbook on this, and we've talked to them and kind of adapted
Yes,
our stuff
yes.
to what they do.
Yeah, I mean, we've got thousands of churches on there, but as Anthony was saying, we've got to be sure that they meet TGC standards.
That's
And
right.
so we're being more careful about that now. Let me say too, Anthony, at this point, we have a strategic ministry plan established for next year, just like we did this time last year. And this time last year, we decided to ask the board to be aggressive, and they were,
Mhm.
and they
Mhm.
expanded our budget by about 25%.
That's right.
And that they swallowed hard, but they said, "We believe in you guys and what you're doing,
Yeah.
so let's get at it." And right now we're still trying to raise that last $1 million of new money. We went
That's
from
right.
8 million to 10 million basically, and so that's 2 million new dollars, and we're still right at the tail end here of the fiscal year, trying to raise that last $1 million. Well, next year, um, shall we give them some news? I mean, the board's going to be asked again to increase the budget by 20% for the same reason. We need to
Yeah.
catch up with who we are, and then we need to serve these people who are begging for our resources. So it'll be another $2 million next year. So I mean, it's the work that you all have done on donor ministries, as well as the infrastructure of our organization and all of our HR policies and everything else, has just been enormous. And yet we really do need more and more help from
That's
donors
right.
to get us where we need to be.
Well, what's interesting is that the final million that we're kind of looking at in new gifts, additional gifts, however you want to phrase it, it's to close out our 2024 fiscal year really well. But we also, if you remember, we changed our fiscal year, so it actually springboards some of the projects I mentioned before, which was the church directory overhaul, new website, starting women's content with a new podcast, and so it's a both and of getting us caught up to the position that with the board and we have said this is where TGC needs to be healthy, but also launching really important initiatives that people are just loving and a part of. And so it's an
Yeah,
interesting time.
we're changing our fiscal year to October 1 so that our big income months are at the beginning of the year instead of the end. In our church years ago, we did the same thing. We moved our fiscal year because December is a big income month. You'd rather have that toward the beginning of the year,
That's right.
so that if you need to make adjustments on expenses, you can do so. So you
That's
guys have
exactly
led
right.
us along the way to do that. It's going to be a big help for us.
No, it's been real healthy. This year's been really healthy and fun, and it's been cool to see a part of it. And now it's actually bleeding out. I don't know if I told you this, it's like starting to bleed out into our partnerships and our audiences. Like I have churches that are reaching out to me and saying, like, hey, what is it like to just overhaul your org chart and implement job descriptions and things like that? And so it's been kind of interesting to be able to do something internal that's missional, but also see that it has initial impact to our partners and things that we work with. So that's really fun. Another question here. There are areas of current youth digital culture that I'm curious if TGC has a strategy to engage with more directly. Influencer live streaming, um, like YouTube, gaming, like TikTok Shorts, things like that. Are there plans to strategically push even deeper into the entrenched into the digital culture, specifically youth? You want to answer that one or me?
Well, I'll say the youth part. You can answer the digital part. We would love to have more influence in with youth. We know there's some other organizations that are sister to us that we love and appreciate, who really emphasize youth more strongly, and then college would be the next group, and then young adults the next group, the 20s. I would say that our conference largely attracts 30 and up, so we feel like we're kind of picking up the ball pretty much at age 30. So before we would be intentional about doing more with youth and college, we need to have a sophisticated strategy that respects the work that's already being done by sister organizations, and find out from them what they need us to do. What I suspect they need us to do is to support their work through our resources and move more of our resources toward youth issues. That's what I suspect we would do. Once again, we do not have the manpower. We don't have the finances to pull that off. But I would think that would be our role, both with youth in college and 20s for that matter. I mean, you've got the Passion Conference, the Cross, you've got other conferences that draw the college and 20s, and we're really grateful for them. We usually pick up that clientele, if you will, when they get a little older, they come to our material. So we do have in the back of our minds ambitions to do more with children, youth, college, and 20s, but we'll need to construct that and have a leader for it. What would you say about the digital aspect of that?
Well, the digital, I mean, like I said earlier, we're equipping those that are equipping others. And so we are writing articles about how to disciple Gen Z. I know that one of my really good friends here in my church, his name's Kyle Richter, has written multiple articles about what's happening in their college ministry to help resource other college pastors and leaders and things like that. I mean, we saw boom here from 200 to 800 students joining our college ministry here in our church. It's been awesome. We've had a handful of Gen Z contests for like writing contests, which has been really fun to kind of embrace with them. That's led to even a few really good authors that are now writing for us from that perspective. And so it's definitely a need. There's been some accidental, or maybe you would say God leading things happening with TGC in that age group. I mean, like you mentioned, our 30 and up crowd for conferences, but for the women's conference, we had 1,500 Gen Z attendees that joined, which is incredible. And that is incredible momentum out of the 9,000 that were there. And so learning, studying, not trying to help them rise up into their spiritual, formation, but also not trying to talk down to them, because the thing about Gen Z culture is they don't really buy into brands, they buy into personality and people. And so getting them plugged in the community, getting them to know us, and then trying to find a good strategy around that is going to be really key. I don't know. Did you want to add anything there before I move on?
No, that's great. Well said. By the way, did you know that for the national conference, we already have some Gen Alpha people signed
Yes.
up?
Middle schoolers. I didn't know if they're coming with their family or if there's like a church group coming. Like
they're hitchhiking. They're really
I'm so excited about that. I was pretty thrilled in the last couple of years when parents were bringing their children to the conference, even young little ones. We even had at the women's conference, we had what was it, like a stroller parking lot.
Yes,
which
yes.
is just incredible. So anyway, all right, next question. How are you thinking of artificial intelligence? Is this one being thrown to you, Sandy? Also, what are the big online trends that you are seeing? You want me to hit on that one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So AI, I think again, if you look at even just history, like, did you like Tim, do you remember what Christians thought about the printing press at the time?
Yeah,
They thought
they
of the
were.
devil.
Yeah,
So we should always be paying attention to new trends, new technologies that are coming in, figuring out how to see it through a biblical lens. And so we are embracing artificial intelligence from more of an early sense. We have an AI policy from a content side, which is it starts with human, ends with humans, and it can't replicate humans, which means name, image, likeness, and voice. And so we do not want to do what God is doing, which is making everyone in His image, and let a computer do that. And so there's ways that we're working on it. I use it to make sure, like basically, grammar check my emails because it does a better job than I could ever do. But outside of that, we're really kind of on the cusp of trying to understand and use it. I use a lot of it for data analysis. So I could feed it. I mean, not to get too dorky, but I could feed it tons and tons of data from our content side and kind of develop insights and things like that that help inform marketing decisions and so on. But we don't use AI to make graphics of humans or to do Sandy's voice, when I want him to say a certain thing. We try to stay away from that. So,
yeah, I would say that
um,
we're trying to do with technology what Luther did with Gutenberg. To really use it for gospel purposes. I will say this about our artificial intelligence: if you ever ask AI a theological question, you're not going to get a good answer. It's
nope.
really interesting to me how, of all the issues that they address, that artificial intelligence addresses, they don't address that one biblically. They can't do it somehow.
That's right.
It's interesting.
That's right. It's very interesting. All right, last question. This one came in from a friend of mine from Canada. TGC is clearly focused on the great dechurching, which is a significant current challenge in the U.S., but is a movement, but is also a movement that is also being felt in places like Canada and Western Europe and things like that. How will TGC balance a focus on the great dechurching while still speaking to a global audience of Christians who have a different macro church challenge? It's pretty good. What do you think, Sandy?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's one of the advantages we have of having international partners, including TGC Canada, Coalition in Latin America, uh,
Mhm.
our French partnership, our African partnership, our Arabic and Southeast Asia partnership. All of these, they get our material, and when we're too Western or too American, they let us know that we missed something. So
Yeah.
having close associates internationally, as well as touching base with all our ethnic groups in the states, really helps us. We get feedback all the time about how we're coming across different groups. And if you just look at our council, our American council, we're well represented with African Americans, Hispanic Americans. We have Asian Americans, an Iranian American. I mean, we even got a couple of Southerners on there. So, so it's we really are committed to being a global movement, but at TGC USA, we are primarily focused on the American population. That's our particular parish. And we expect the Canadians and the Latins and the Europeans to be focused on their parishes as well.
Mhm.
So it's a combination of addressing primarily American issues, but being really sensitive to how that's affecting the global church.
That's good. I mean, and we're trying to even just standardize like our initiatives. Like I mentioned the church directory and having that on our website. I know that TGC Canada has a church directory. I know that Coalition does. And so all those things, those strategies that we see work, um, we want to resource and provide our international efforts as well. I mean, we spend like what 10% of our operating budget is international efforts. Does that sound about right?
That
Um,
sounds about right. Yeah.
yeah, and we hope that that continues. And so we're really thankful for all that work that's being done and those people who are translating and taking our content for the corners of the earth, as the old folks used to say. So,
Well, and
uh,
if you just take Coalition alone, they're reaching about 8 million people. I mean, they have about
Yeah,
8 million users on their website,
that,
and
that's
about a
right.
third of those actually are American Hispanics. So
That's
we've
right.
got a tremendous inreach to the Hispanic community.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Um, I have time for one more question, but I want to go ahead and announce the winners from the game earlier. I know Sandy, you were around, got to hear me kind of be the game show host for a second. But remember, it was who was the farthest away domestically and internationally, and the prize is going to be a free cohort registration that we have. We have 4 cohorts launching in the spring. I'll email you privately after this to send you the link to the cohorts, and you can tell them one that sounds good to you. So our domestic winner was Pearl from Shelton, Washington, 2,047 miles away from me. Pretty far. That's pretty. That's. I mean, I'm in the middle of the U.S., and so you must be right on the corner, staring at the ocean. And then internationally was Keys from the Netherlands, 4,443 miles away from me. That is a long way. We have ties in the Netherlands, don't we, Sandy? With
Yeah.
some of
Oh,
our
yeah.
international.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's awesome. So we're glad you're here, both of you. You guys, I'll email you today or tomorrow and hook you up with the cohort page, and you tell me which one sounds appealing to you, and we'll get you going.
Anthony,
If
let
there's no
me
more,
ask, yeah, let me
go
ask
ahead.
you this, and I probably shouldn't do this with everybody watching, but can we can we send people more information if they want it? Is there some way they can get it, like our overview
Yeah.
brochure
Oh
and
yeah. 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 So as we kind of wrap things up here, I just want to kind of invite you all in. So one of the things we want to do is just inform you about TGC. Some of the people on this call are already donors. And so when we talk about things like 30 million people on our website, 10 million plus downloads to our podcast, 747 hours of YouTube content viewed all in the last year. Thank you, donors, for making that possible. We're really, really appreciative of you. And those who are just kind of learning about TDC, I do want to invite you in and partnering with us. And I'll send some overview documents for you. We have a one sheet that kind of hits on the high level things about TGC, and then a little flip book that you can look at. But as Sandy said, we do have $1 million need left, and those aren't just needs to kind of close out the end of the year. It's also to kickstart some really important projects that we're looking forward to in 2025. I mentioned the website being revamped, the church directory being relaunched, and new women's content that we're trying to get off the ground. And so if that's something that is important to you that you would love to do, there's a QR code that I'm about to pop up on the screen that you can use, or we'll send you an email later on um, to be able to do that. And so that $1 million is all new gifts. And we would love to invite you in to do that as we look at the opportunity ahead of us that we get to do to continue to expand the reach, while also the depth of the mission that God has called TGC to do. And
Anthony,
so,
I see about 4 categories that people might be particularly interested in. One, of course,
mhm,
is the website. I know some of the people on this call really would like to see us upgrade that. And if they would
yes,
like to, specify their gift that way. Also, you have Coalition, which is about a $500,000 project that's for everything south of the border and for American Hispanics. So we need
that's right.
about a 500,000. This is the way our budget's made up. And then the Keller Center and the Carson Center, they
Mm,
each of them need about a $500,000 a year. So if someone wants to kind of connect to those particular communities, a donor community kind of gets developed around those, then let us know. We'd be glad to include you in that. For example, the Keller Center, they have kind of their own donor community. The Carson Center likewise. So if you have an interest in any of those, just let us know.
absolutely. I'm pretty excited about next year, Sandy. I know that you're saying a new president will be on board, but I know you'll stick around for a little while to help that transition go really well. But we before we close, I'm going to have you close this out in prayer in a second. But before we do, I just want to thank everyone that joined today, and we hope that you continue to um, use TGC's content, that it continues to become enriching in your lives. And that you let us know, give us feedback. You'll get my email. I love hearing feedback about TGC and stories. We'd love to invite you in, not only in a partnership financially, but also a partner as we continue to grow and take care of the needs of our audience. So, Sandy, I don't know if you want to close in prayer, and then we'll head out.
I'd love to, and I join you, Anthony, in thanking everybody for joining us. And we realize you've given us this hour to talk about TGC. Each of you is involved in your own workplace, your own families, your own churches, and your own ministries. And we know that you have your issues too. And I'm sorry, I would love to take several more hours and debrief you all and figure out how we can specifically pray for you. But I'd love to pray for you now in general. Let's bow together. Father, we are so thankful for the gospel. Thank you that this gospel is the power of God unto salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also for the Greek. And we pray that we may apply that gospel to every aspect of our lives. Thank you for the men and women on this call who obviously have an interest in the propagation of the gospel. And I pray that you'll continue to bless them in every realm of their lives, that they may be fruitful for the gospel. We thank you for your church and that the gospel brings us into community one with the other. And we pray that we at TGC and every other organization and every other person will be used by you to build up the Church of Jesus Christ here in this country and around the world. That's our great ambition, O Lord, and we pray that you would do it and allow us to see it so that this de-churching season in American history will turn into the greatest harvest of churching of this population of believers in our country that we've ever seen. That's our prayer, and we make it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Bless you all.
See you, Sandy. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks.
See y'all.